Welcome to Moon to Moon. This is episode 196. And in this episode, we are exploring Living Emergence. This is an invitation that I'm putting out as a series. We just started this one in 194 with therapeutic, intuitive energy healer and my podcast co-host at Crystal Ballers, Natasha Levenger. And in this episode, we have my longtime friend and collaborator, Jonathan Koe. So let me introduce Jonathan for any of you who might not know Jonathan. All right. Jonathan is an astrologer, mystical mentor, energy worker, creation guide, and musician. Jonathan supports mystics in making their art, artists in embracing the mystery, and entrepreneurs in translating their visions. True to their Virgo rising and Gemini Moon path, Jonathan is a huge nerd with 2 master's degrees, one in music and one in economics. A Pisces Sun at heart, Jonathan is happiest when he's helping clients and students realize their own truth, and when he's in the flow state, making music for pure enjoyment. Many of y'all know that Jonathan and I have been playing together in the fields of astrology and the tarot and the energy healing arts and human design. Whatever we're tapping into, we have been playing at talking with one another since 2019, when Jonathan found me through Google for an astrology reading. And it turned out from looking into me that we have the same birthday, March 4th. And this is something that we reference in our conversation. So over the years, Jonathan and I have been many roles opposite each other: teacher, student, client astrologer, client energy healer, co-facilitators, collaborators, dear friends. Most recently, Jonathan is one of the 3 faculty inside of Emergence Astrology Year 2, which is in its first year ever, with the cohort that was the first ever Year 1 cohort last year. So I'm currently in close touch with Jonathan as we are weaving curriculum together for the Year 2 community, which is so very exciting. So when I wanted to have a conversation about Living Emergence, I knew that Jonathan would be one of the first people that I would want to come on. Given how long we've been working together and how many conversations we've had over the years, I mean, we have logged hours and hours and hours, both on camera and off camera. We love talking. So we knew to schedule 2 hours for this one. Like, oh, we've done this before. So we took exactly 2 hours to have this conversation. We needed all of it. When we get together, we love to have like a very simple sketch, like what's the heart of it? Where do we probably want to go? Okay, you feel good? Yeah, I feel good. And then we go and just start talking. And you can feel in our energy that at a spirit level, we are like skipping along a fun path together. We are jumping rope together. We are having a blast. So enjoy this conversation of Living Emergence. We explore many zones. We do a lot of talk from human design here. So if you are new or if you have yet to get into human design, please just allow the keywords to wash over you and just follow the vibe, like catch the drift of these 2 Pisces. We're giving you the vibe and see what sticks for you. It's such a fun area to explore as you dive in. We do speak quite a bit of astrology here. Again, if you're learning astrology, inviting you to just let the current take you and feel into what we're saying, even if you don't really know the vocab words. And enjoy. Like this feels like one to take long walks with. Just like kind of let it take you places because we meander. We try to come back to the central root, like the central trunk. We do lots of branching out as we enjoy doing. And I also feel like we really came to some profound places. We really expanded the limits of where this conversation could be at in the act of being in an encounter together, which is so exciting and so beautiful and so creative. So, thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, everyone, for being here. Enjoy this conversation with Jonathan Koe. Welcome back to Moon, Jonathan Koe.
Thank you, Britton. I always love being here. So I'm so grateful for the invitation, and this feels so exciting. So, yay!
Yay. I was just telling Jonathan that I feel a lot of playground energy in my spirit. I know that we're going to have fun. We have like a gentle sense of what we're going to talk about today on the topic of living emergence, but mostly we're just going to meander wherever the conversation takes us. Why don't you, before we dive in though, just share a little bit about who you are, like what's emergent for you? Who are you emerging into in this moment in 2025?
Sure. Yeah. I have been thinking about this as always, right? All of us are always thinking, how do I introduce myself? I'm currently speaking to you, Britton, in a moment of meeting deeper parts of myself in a more kind of grounded, but at the same time, colorful ways. So, for a long time, I feel like, especially kind of doing this work that you and I do, right? You know, working with astrology, with human design, with human consciousness in general, it's easy to kind of default into the archetype of the sage. But I feel like in this moment, I am really re-encountering myself as a creator. Also, I think there's child archetype in there. There's rebel and outlaw archetype in there. So I'm kind of showing up with more of that energy, I feel like today. Um, yeah, let's see. How do I want to formally introduce myself? I am an astrologer. I'm an energy worker. I also have been calling myself a mystical mentor and a creation guide. And to me, the heart of my work is helping artists be more comfortable and be more friendly with the mystery and helping mystics make their art. Because to me, there's something so potent about the intersection of mysticism, you know, being in relationship with the mystery of life and creation. And something that is, kind of a hill I'm willing to die on, Britain, is that I vehemently disagree with the idea that healing modalities and healing tools are here to sanitize us because
Mhm.
there is sometimes a thought form that I think is so prevalent, especially because so much of these healing modalities are now filtered through kind of mainstream, maybe psychological lens, even though I don't want to bedevil that because I think there's definitely value to that. But it's then filtered through the collective consciousness as these tools to help us get into a state of forever being regulated. Never feeling the bad vibes again. And I have found that to be not true, especially for people who are both creative and mystical. Because I think that part of our angst or that excess energy is really here for us to be turned into something creative, something new, something innovative. And I think that in my work, I really use these tools, these frameworks, and these perspectives to help people really see that side of themselves, really honor that side of themselves, and then to start living into the question of what do you want to do with that energy, you know?
Mhm.
And I want to also bring in my own personal lens about this because I oscillate between these two extremes in my life. There is this part of me that's kind of like the golden child, let's just say it, who's like always trying to do things right, always trying to be the best. And then I oscillate into the other part that, especially growing up, adults around me were always trying to control, which is this kind of unpredictable, wilder side of me. And people are always like, calm down, calm down.
This is not who you are.
Yeah, yeah. So I think a lot of my work in the past 5, 6 years have been experiencing this like pendulum swing between one or the other. And I think they're both necessary, right? Because on the road to really understanding and, dare I even say, mastering some of these tools and frameworks, you do need to get really discerning, right? You do need to
Mhm.
get pretty granular and clear about what it is. What are we even looking at? What is this system trying to tell me? How can we use the system properly? But at the same time, as you know, Britton, once you bring it into real life is gonna life, and we are invited into this ever emergent field of reality. And so how we translate these knowledges and these tools, um, yeah, I think requires a lot of attunement,
Yeah.
and part of cultivating that attunement I've found has to do with radical acceptance of our true nature and whatever our experience is. Because if you don't start with that acceptance piece, you can't get to clear seeing.
Hmm. It'll always be like a striving that is false in some way.
Yeah, yeah.
You're reminding me of like years ago. I can't remember what it was, but I'm not going to quote you correctly. This is just my memory that you had said something to me once like, I am not Dumbledore. I was like sitting back, like, huh. And I did realize that I had projected on you this picture of someone who like will always have an answer. And that like you really didn't need the projection because you carry such a strong sage archetype because you are so wise and
Mm,
also, loving like the mud and the dirt at the bottom of like Gandalf the Grey's cloak, like there's a earthiness to the mess
mm,
that you're also engaging with.
yeah.
Um, and that's fair too.
Hmm.
That's where you get to not know the answers. And that's where the creativity then comes from,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep. Actually, an archetype of the sage that I feel is maybe closer to my energy is Merlin.
Yeah,
I feel like
totes.
Merlin has that trickster vibes, and here's the thing, Britton. I feel like when the trickster comes out, everybody's surprised, right?
Yeah,
Myself included, because true trickster is not me trying to mess with people. Like in,
true.
in fact, I think true trickster really comes through as this energy, right? As this archetype that is beyond our control. When someone is trying to trickster, usually there's something dubious or kind of fishy about that, But I
Mhm.
think true trickster comes through as a result of deeply engaging with reality,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then we get into a point where we're kind of shocked, right, by reality.
Emergence.
Yes.
Um, so Yeah, I wanted to we have a loose plan to look at emergence through the modalities of the signs
Hmm.
and this astrological language that we both love so much and love speaking together. But I wanted to share with you, I've been getting into the gene keys again and human design. Jonathan knows that I go into these wild deep dives
Hmm.
with human design, and then I like retreat and I
Yeah.
just need to live it for like a year to 2 years before I can go back. Are you the same way?
I would say so, or I've definitely gone through a period like that. Like I first encountered human design around 2021, right after the first Magician's Table, I remember.
Okay.
Hmm. And then I got my first reading and it felt really resonant, but still felt kind of like far away. I remember when I first encountered human design, I didn't like that I was a generator and that was the most common type. I was like, oh, how offensive. How could you?
You didn't like being Virgo rising either when you
I didn't
found.
like. Yes, you're right, Rin. I'm offended. So then I went on a bit of a break and then I started studying human design more formally. And I think, as is always the case when we study systems, but specifically with human design, I think I got a little bit dogmatic maybe about it. I needed to get a little dogmatic about it. And then I had to kind of leave it behind. And then I found the gene keys and then I went back to human design. So, yeah, I think similar to you, there is kind of a zigzaggy intelligence to human design that's maybe a
Mm.
little less present when we were, at least less present when I was learning astrology. That was not my
Hmm.
experience with
Me
astrology. What
either.
about you? Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it was just like, I don't think I ever had a stopping period with astrology. I've never had a stopping period. Like, I'll be living with it, engaging with it every day. Maybe I'm not actively learning something, but it's
Hmm.
not like it like leaves my space, Where human design, I'll just kind of forget about it and then it will come back and it will really come back. So here we go. Looks like I'm going to have to go to uh level 3, whatever that one's called.
Oh, yeah. Rave cartography? Hmm.
Yes. Yes. But I wanted to share with you, listeners, you may know that Jonathan and I are both March 4th. So we
Yay.
have the same gate 63 as our personality sun
Yeah.
and cross of consciousness with 63, 64, 5, and 35. And just let this wash over you if you are not currently learning, not yet learning human design. Um, but I was playing with like a phrase for this, and I wrote down, live the questions at the speed of trust and let the answers express as kind, brave experiments.
Mm.
How does that feel?
So true. So resonant. It's also making me think about both of us being 3-5 profiles.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier you had mentioned kind of the projection field, which I'm probably also responsible for putting that up. Let's just be real. I probably projected outwards too. Um, and I think that for both Sun and Gate 63, as well as being, a 3-5 profile, there is this quality of here's how I've heard the third line mind being described, Britain, which is that we learn through experiences. I think this is always true to a certain extent for everyone. But, for example, contrast it with the first line way of looking at things. The first line likes to learn, right? The first line likes to gather all the information, but the third line needs to then go out into the field, make some mistakes, bump their knees, and that's how we learn. There is something very, in a way, very somatic about how we learn, right? And very much guided by our unique experiences, which, from a reality creation perspective, our experiences are really what our aura attracts, right? Our how we emanate, how our energy functions in the world attracts the kinds of experiences that we end up living through. Or at least, if attract is too strong a word, it interacts with reality to bring the specific cocktail of experiences that we are here to play with, right? And so I think the third line mind is always like in this reiterative process.
Hmm.
We take one piece of information, we walk with it, and then we edit it and amend it, and then we go to the next experience and we try another piece, and there's kind of a really adventurous quality to it, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the picture I'm having listening is just um, like how, like, say, falling and scraping my knees to me feels like this exciting. I know what that means. That means I threw myself into it. I got dirty. And now, like, I can't wait to talk about what I learned, what I was doing when I did that thing.
Yep.
And like, oh, it's going to be so fun. Like, um, pulling together all of these threads of experience into something to share.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I think the fifth line body also has a propensity and a desire to share their knowledge in a way that is useful for other people. Because
Mhm.
there's a part of us that's always really attuned and aware to the mistakes that other people are making that are similar to the mistakes we were making, you know?
Yes.
And mistakes are, I think mistakes get such a bad reputation in this culture. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because when I think about the mistakes I made, Britain, that's how I learn.
It's so sweet.
It's so sweet, and it's like I've been thinking about the idea of neutralizing successes and failures. It's like if you think about let's try to define success for a moment here, right? Success is like, that failure attempt that happens to work. Success is just
Mhm.
failures that work, and failures are just like the attempts we take on the road to success. They are all part of this greater spectrum. I think like you can't really achieve success, however you want to define it, without failures. And failures also would not exist without the desire to find success, right? So they're always interacting with one another and they're such integral parts of one another. So anybody who wants to achieve some level of success necessarily needs to make a lot of mistakes.
Yes. It's almost like mistake seeking is the fertile ground or something.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Yum.
Back to the playground energy you were bringing
Ye-
in at the start of this conversation.
Yeah, I love this. And I think for me the key piece is the five part around pacing, and like pacing as related to trusting in the body's like capacity, interest, rhythm.
Hmm.
That part for me maybe has been the greatest reprogramming, um, to trust in, since it's out of the mental space where I
Yeah.
do tend to have more confidence.
Yes, me too. Me too. Yeah. Yeah. And you're specifically talking about gate five, right?
Yes,
Yeah, which is in
yes.
the sacral.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
both you and I have the 515 channel,
we
right?
do. And so many people that I'm close to do as well. It's
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and there's like yeah, I really love feeling someone's connection to their own 515.
Mm.
So that's like, oh, you're doing yours and I'm doing mine, and we
Yeah.
understand this.
Yes. Yes.
I'm in my
Yeah.
pace, you're in yours. We'll
Yeah.
touch base and
We'll
find
touch
find a
base.
place where our rhythms connect. It feels
Yes.
so loving.
It is. It is. You're reminding me, Britton, of a conversation I had last night with my mom, who also has the 515 channel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my mom has the 515 channel, and she's a Libra sun. And something I've had to learn is, people with strong Libra placements, maybe to a certain extent, seventh house placements too, because there is kind of similar
Yes.
flavors, right?
Hmm.
Um, even though they're not one to one. Often I find that people with Libra placements need time to coalesce the different information. The indecision we often talk about with Libra has to do with not quite arriving at a point where all these different pieces of information synthesizes, you know? And
Hmm.
to me, there's kind of a correlation here with gate 5 and gate 15 and that 515 channel as well, because rhythm is basically when you get into a flow, right? And what happens before we get into the flow? We are collecting all the different pieces, right? And it looks really disjointed and feels really disjointed, right? And
Hmm.
in order to get into the flow, you sometimes have to take the time to really put the pieces together, and this is something I was navigating with my mom because I have found that a lot of people, especially generators, feel the pressure to know because we are sacral beings and generally we just know, right? Especially because we have that sacral definition, we just know. Our sacral tells us yes or no, right? But what happens when the sacral is like, no answer yet?
Right?
You gotta wait. You gotta wait. And I think what you are
Yes.
speaking to, Britton, is like bringing gentleness into this relational process, right? Of like, can we just continue to ask more questions? And I'm
Hmm.
now kind of weaving this back into our um, sun in gate 63 of like, can we continue to ask questions and collect information without the pressure to have to arrive to the answer at a specific time frame?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And this is so powerful in collaboration when maybe there's a shared goal that we have progressed to a certain place by a certain time, but the evidence of the timing is still in collecting phase, like um keeping in touch with one another to note that everything's okay, like we're on time. It's just a little bit different than we had originally said with the calendar.
Yes.
Working with urgency conditioning in order to listen to that, I think is pretty radical change.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Well, that's our prelude. um, Thank you so much for playing with me there. Yeah, we had talked about exploring emergence through the modalities. Would you
Hmm.
like to dive in there?
Yeah, let's do it. I feel like, okay, so before I fully jump in, something that I was thinking about in the shower right before this conversation, Britton, is how I'm curious if you've ever defined emergence and what emergence means, because I got curious about this and um I have my thoughts about it, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts about how you define emergence in this moment.
Aw. Well, I've really needed to allow this to be something I'm living into.
Mm,
Um, so it's always an emergent definition,
mm,
but for me, it has like a personal and a collective signification. that are deeply connected, the personal speaking to the that which has been concealed that is becoming revealed.
Mm.
And so for me, what I like about this is that instead of like a picture about a becoming that's out in the future, that's something that you've got to figure out how to get to,
Mm.
or you've got to learn these hacks in order to become that thing over there,
Mhm.
that emergence is about becoming approachable to a something that's already here within you, but the conditions like haven't been there or the timing hasn't arrived, and now emergently it's becoming revealed. So
Mm.
it's innate and inherent, the thing that emerges
Yeah.
according to proper timing and circumstances.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
then that is connected to emergence as it has to do with bird murmuration, where a movement of an individual shifts the movement of the body of the collective. And
Mhm.
in this way, personal emergence has collective impacts. And it's not just like a cute thing that we're doing for our individual growth, which is also important, but it also recognizes that we all have impacts,
Yeah.
and that this can be a creative process with the seen and the unseen that are supporting us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Wow. Thank you. That's really beautiful. Yeah. What I'm really resonating with is what you said about proper timing and
mhm.
circumstances, because I do feel when I tune into this word emergence, there's something here about the parts coming together and then creating something in the whole that the parts couldn't really make happen on its own, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And when I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole this morning, Britton, feeling into emergence and looking at
Yes.
the uh, kind of historical precedents, let's just say. And I was surprised because emergence as a concept has been around for potentially as long as or as far back as Aristotle,
Mm,
which I
amazing.
think is really cool. And I then started to ask myself this question of like, why is it so up in the collective right now? Like, why is it that, your project being one of them, and I really, really love your earlier definition with which feels so mystical to me, like that which has always been there that, kind of begins to um make itself known, right? Um, and my hypothesis is that we are at the brink of a really significant collective shift at the moment. And there's my hunch and my intuition about it, which is one aspect of it. But then also what I find interesting is in kind of going out there, starting to talk to different people, and again, bringing in human design into the conversation here. Ra Uru has talked about this shift that is happening in 2027. And there's not a lot of kind of reliable sources around this 2027 so-called prophecy, but a resource that I've been finding really helpful is one that's created by our colleagues, Kelsey Rose Tortorici, with her friend Jessa Reed. And there's a course about this. So if people want to go, super deep dive into this, they can. It's on Jessa's website. Um, but essentially, there's a few key pieces to mention here. One is that we are largely, just to kind of oversimplify this, and again, I want to kind of put a disclaimer here that I'm not really an expert on this. I'm mostly a consumer, and I'm still thinking about this, and I'm still feeling into this, and I'll talk mostly from the vibes. I can talk
Thank you.
about the vibes. But essentially we're moving from a collective cross of planning into a collective background frequency of cross of sleeping phoenix. So if we even just kind of imaginatively, intuitively sense into the idea of having lived through in the past 400 years, the cross of planning, right? It's literally kind of what it sounds like. We as a collective have been driven by this internal desire to come together and build a structure where the most amount of people can live and survive, right? I think we can see this happening in the collective. Like we've never lived in an era where the survival rate is as high as it is now, right? In previous chapters of history, there have always been these big disasters, big plagues that wipe out a really high percentage and proportion of the population, and we've created all these technologies and these structures that help people survive, you know. Um, and of course, it's easy for us now, living in this now moment in our lifetime, to criticize, how we are not tending to the preciousness of all life. But if we look at it from a historical perspective, if we take ourselves into, the last millennia or so, the chance of survival has not been as high as it is today, right? When a
Right.
baby is born, for that baby to then grow to be 70 or 80, the chance of that has not been as high as it's been in recent living memory, you know? Um, and so cross planning has been all about like coming together and creating these structures to ensure survival. Now, Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is a different matter altogether. The Cross of Sleeping Phoenix that we are moving into is marked by people rising into their personal power, people raising their consciousness, people following their intuition. And the biggest shift is that cross of planning is mostly tribal, cross of planning is mostly individual. And so we're already starting to see this, right? We're starting to see how we are now really wanting to make space for the individual brilliance to come through. Not very long ago, people who were innovators, people who were original thinkers were basically chopped off, right? There is that, I was talking to a Swedish friend of mine who said there is this phrase that people say in Sweden, apparently, the tallest grass gets chopped first.
Okay.
Where the idea is that if you stand out, you're gonna get chopped off, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's part of the cross planning frequency that we've been living through as a collective, that we are trying to kind of put people into boxes, right? Put things into categories. And Cross of Sleeping Phoenix is about the dissolution of a lot of these collective structures, not because they no longer serve us, but because as a species, we're kind of moving into really wanting to know what can happen when we honor the individual inklings, right? That, to kind of bring it back to our discussion a moment ago about the 515 channel, Britain, it's this idea of every individual honoring their own knowing, their own rhythm, what is correct for them, and finding moments of resonance, right?
Mm.
Moments of meeting one another and potentially creating, when individuals come together at the time and in the moment, at the point in their process that is actually resonant for them to meet together, then we create something really beautiful together, right? But there's also a sense, because we are moving in a way of being that's more guided by this resonance, according to this theory, there's a sense that when we create something beautiful, it's not for us to hold on to it forever and ever, which the cross of planning would like to do, right? The cross of planning stumbles into something beautiful and it's like, okay, let's figure out how to recreate that times 1,000.
Yes.
Industrialization, right? Capitalism, colonialism, yay, right?
We figured it out.
Figure it out. This is how you're supposed to be. Whereas the cross of sleeping phoenix is more about um, being in a receptive mode and watching the rising and falling of these impulses, right, that move through us. One of the gates, or two of the gates that are activated then on a collective level through this cross of sleeping phoenix is the 2034, which is a classic manifesting generator channel. And that channel is pure energy, has no awareness, right? Which is sometimes, for those people who have been experimenting with human design for some time can attest, right? The manifesting generator energy has this quantum energy to it. It's like, I'm working on this, and then I'm working on this other thing, working on this other thing. Suddenly, fuse all of them together. It's turning into this really amazing secret new thing. And then we dissolve it, right? I'm moving on. Like that is kind of the manifesting generator energy, and it's like burst of energy, working really, really excitedly on something, talking about it, and then suddenly, boop, energy's gone. 6 months going into hermitage, right? There is
Hmm.
kind of that quality. And I think that as a collective, we're trying to navigate this, right? Because you can see um, we kind of live in a world where things can happen really, really fast at a much more quantum pace than we've been used to. And, there is this tension, I think, between the newer generation who recognizes that things can happen really fast and dissolves really fast versus the older generation that has this mentality that, oh, reality works a certain way and it has to be, step one, step two, step three, choose your career, right? Don't stray from the path, blah blah blah, you know okay, I feel like I've
Yes.
just talked a lot, but
Yeah, and what it's bringing up for me too is this is speaking to the centrality of self-trust
Mhm.
in like this new way of being whereby um they're just it's inefficient, it's not very loving to the self, it's not as creative, it's not as alive in so many ways to cede your authority to affiliation groups and systems that operate according to shame, fear, control, such that safety is about as a game of being a good person, being seen as a good person within the system and within the community, and that as a motivator is not a useful strategy.
Yeah,
Like where we're going, it needs to be a self-trusting process. That doesn't mean you're cut off from community, but it's how you hold your own node within it in a way that's going to be regenerative for the whole. Is what it feels like.
exactly. Exactly. I think that it's not that we no longer need each other, that now we're just every man for themselves kind of game, right? But I think it is a different way of even defining what it means to be in community.
Yeah.
There is a different genre that's kind of emerging right now. And to tie it back to where I was going with this, Britton, is, you know, we launched into this discussion because I was trying to figure out like why is it that emergence is becoming a concept that is really tickling and resonant to the collective imagination at this moment. And I think it's because that background frequency is shifting. And this is something I learned from Kelsey, which is that background frequency is not some like mystical mumbo jumbo thing out there that is like impacting all of us, right? But it's actually coming from within. Like it is kind of our consciousness, our evolution as a species that is shifting the frequency of the collective, right?
Mhm.
That, I'm going to give a grounded, concrete example about this. Try watching TV shows um, from the 80s. You can see that people are very different. People used to be very different, and there even is, if you really notice, like what people decided to include, right? Or, not include, it's a very different affect, and even recently, this is not from the 80s, but my partner and I have been watching Project Runway, like the early seasons of Project Runway.
I'm watching the one with
Really?
Christian Serrano right now with Arden.
Yes. I
Is that
love
his name?
Project Runway.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like my third round.
Yes. I love Project Runway. But when you watch the earlier seasons, we were so different.
Yeah, it's so
Like
true.
there's such a difference in how people talk to one another, what people think competition even looks like. It's like there's such a vast, rapid shift, I think, in how we see, like, even what we consider entertaining,
Yeah.
and how we relate to one another. And there's much more of a flexibility, I find nowadays. So, for example, in this most recent season of Project Runway, um, as always, because this is a design competition, right? As they always like to iterate to us. They're always saying this is a design competition. And then everybody's kind of talking shit about one another. But what I find so interesting about this specific season, this most recent season, Britain, is how you also see these footages of people like supporting one another, right?
Mm.
They're talking shit
Hmm.
about one another and they're supporting one another, which to me is like such a beautiful example, maybe, or embodiment of this individual frequency coming through. Right? We can be in competition, but competition doesn't mean that we always have to hate each other. Like there will be moments where we support each other too, you know? And we
Yes.
remember this is the game we're playing right now. So where was I going with this? I think what I was really trying to say is that there is the when we come back to this phrase of living emergence that you offer to be at the middle of this altar of this conversation we're currently having, there's a flexibility to it too. And I think this flexibility, um, to your point, requires self-trust. But I also think that self-trust is our default state, actually. That it's more
Hmm.
about remembering how to trust ourselves because as
Yes.
children, we've always been self-trusting. Like if you look at children, they're just like looking at other people eating and they're like, that looks so interesting. And then we tell them like, don't look at people eating. That's rude, right? But it's like that's actually resonance in action.
Yeah.
We are looking at the thing, we can't help but be obsessed at the thing that we find fascinating, that our energy wants to move towards, right? This is something that I've been working with some private um, clients and mentees, where especially when they come to me to learn energy work and energetic attunement, something that we've had to unwind is the we basically have been trained physically, somatically, energetically, and mentally, Britain, to not look deeply at certain situations
Yeah.
because we are taught that it's rude to look at another
Mm.
person. And then what we do is this somewhat distorted game of like, okay, because I'm not allowed to look, I'm going to bring this person's energy into my field. I'm going to open one of my chakras, right? One of my energy centers really wide and absorb the energy, especially for people with strong water sign placements.
Oh.
As a Pisces sun myself, like I I chronically do this. I open my second energy center really widely, right? The second energy center governs feelings, empathy, and I absorb and run it through my system. And then, we say these things to one another like, "Ooh, I feel you." And I think it's okay to say, "I feel you." But if what you're doing is running other people's energy through your system, that is not a sustainable way to be,
Hmm.
especially if you're not conscious about it, right? I think it's okay to do momentarily because there are these moments that we share, but knowing how to then return to our own original or um, the setting that is resonant with us specifically as an individual is so important. And I think we're kind of in this moment of learning how to see what is happening without absorbing it into our system. Because going back to your idea about emergence, right? I think emergence happens or kind of collective emergence is made more powerful when each of the parts are kind of playing their own color and
Yes.
playing their own role, right? And then as a collective, we can create something that's new. This is, I think, where the new, at least this is how I'm conceptualizing it. This is how the new background frequency is going to work, right? Through different people feeling empowered to be in their own energy, to do what's right for them. And then naturally, we will want to collaborate because through that resonance, we'll see other people who are kind of on similar wavelengths. And we're like, "Ooh, I see you.
Yes.
You know, I see you. Let's make this amazing painting all together." But, if we are constantly to use the analogy of painting, Britain, if you are primarily, operating your aura in red, let's just say, and I am primarily operating in blue, and we only know how to merge into purple together, then we just make a bunch of purple paintings.
Yep.
You know,
It's
a
so true.
hundred purple paintings later, it stops becoming fascinating.
Yes, and this is like what I'm feeling here is the rise in conversations around being able to hold disagreement and difference
Yes.
and not see it as a threat. Um, and to notice in oneself a sense that, like, oh, I need to match this, and like being able to recognize it and kind of come back to yourself. Um, because that's like the conditioned thing, but not, like you said, not for kids.
Hmm.
Little kid, my favorite color is orange. My favorite color is da da da.
Yes, exactly. And they're like, "Cool, great."
Cool. Each got our own.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and like how beautiful. Okay, so just to kind of, loop it back into the point of
Yes.
cross of planning versus cross of sleeping phoenix, I think part of why self-trust is so necessary in this moment is because when we were living fully in that cross of planning era, there's a lot of energy there, right? There's a lot of energy that we can hold on to in the collective that is basically the energy sounds like this. The collective has created a container for you all to operate within. In order for all of us to maintain law and order, we have to hook into the collective
Yes.
agreements and we have to perform in accordance to that. And there was a lot of energy there. Like that energy really held us up for a while, right? I think we were as a species collectively experimenting with what does it look like if everybody acts the same way, dresses the same way, talks the same way. Great, right? Order is established. But now as the background frequency is changing and as we are wanting to move into a different game, basically, there's not enough power for that collective agreement to hold us anymore.
Yeah. I
Like
so
it,
see this.
yeah. And it's like, I think I go back to this idea, right, Britton, where change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of experimenting.
Whew.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And we are done with that chapter of everybody looking the same way. We all see the shadow of it. We don't want it anymore. And I think on an unconscious level, even the people who are trying to revert things back into the way it was before are recognizing we're not that's not really happening, is it?
Yeah,
You know? And it's like falling apart fast because we are shifting into a new game. And I always
we
think
are.
about this. the word game sometimes kind of brings up certain associations for people, but I contextualize that as a musician from the perspective of music, right? When we're in the era where a lot of us were so fascinated with rock as a genre, there's a certain rule, right, that we like to uphold. It's like screaming, electric guitars, right? These complicated guitar riffs. And then when we move into the era of hip hop, it's a very different rule of what is considered cool, right? It's now like beats driven. We're no longer like playing with these complicated melodies, right? It's maybe more spoken. There's more of a colloquial energy to it. It's very different. And it's just a difference in this is not dogmatic. It's not about right or wrong. It's just like a different genre that we are experimenting with, I think.
Yes. I really love what invoking the word game does to the spirit of the things. So I'm
Mm,
here for it.
yeah,
Because there is a lot of fear here around this collectively. And there are a lot of consequences that are very scary that come forward from that fear. And so when we can speak of it as a game, it can change the attitude and the way we hold our bodies as we speak to it. And that feels more supportive to creativity
absolutely. Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
listening. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Hmm.
Did a chapter just close?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I'm feeling this impulse to kind of maybe tie it back to the modalities that we mentioned in the beginning.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, because to me, this idea of looking at emergence through the lens of the astrological modalities, right, which are really cardinal, fixed, and mutable. To me, this is um getting more into the weeds and more into like the application of like, okay,
Ooh,
here are
yum.
these big concepts that you and I have been talking about. We've been swimming in Pisces style. And it's like, let's maybe, I don't know, I'm feeling some curiosity and hunger to talk more maybe about our lived experience and our, you know,
Mhm.
personal experiences about this, Britain, and how to navigate it because I think the idea of like the cardinal, the fixed, and the mutable is over time for me one of the points of contemplation in astrological concepts that have been massively helpful in all of my endeavors, to be honest. In my mystical studies, right, in my um creative work, in stepping more into entrepreneurship, in relationships as well because we all go through these cycles, right? So if the cardinal signs start things, the fixed sign maintain it or bring it to its peak, and then the mutable sign brings it to completion and transforms the energy into something else, right? We are always moving through those cycles, and similarly with we see this in the lunar cycle as well, right? In astrology. And I think there is, especially if we look at the prevalent illusion that maybe we were sleeping in, the collective dream of the cross of planning is that, okay, we just figured out the formula and we can continue to, apply this formula ad infinitum. Never have to
Mm.
worry about it again. This is the right formula. Don't you dare ask any questions.
Right.
At least that was one. See, I think this is the other thing I kind of want to bring into, which is that because we're in this moment of transition, I think it's easy to kind of maybe put cross-up planning on like poo-pooing cross-up planning and then putting cross-up sleeping on a pedestal, but I don't think that they are really like I don't think any of them are better or worse. It's like I love a lot of cross-up sleeping Phoenix stuff, Britain. It's like Zoom is very cross-up sleeping Phoenix. This
Mm-hmm.
podcast as a format is very cross of planning, right? Excuse me. What I meant was look, you and I are talking on Thursday, and then whenever it is that you release this episode, people get to listen to it. But it's only through the cross of planning genius of like trying to figure out how to make our lives more efficient that this kind of art form becomes possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think, to bring in Kelsey, she brought in this example of like the salad kit from Trader Joe's. That's very cross of planning. It's like, here are the things we know you will like, you know? Let me put it
Enjoy.
together. Yeah, let me put it together so it takes you literally 2 seconds to put this, to be able to enjoy it. And you can just buy it for like 4.99. How amazing, you know?
Good analogy. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. My daughter was just saying yesterday, speaking about, I love Trader Joe's.
Me too. I love Trader Joe's too. And it's like how amazingly convenient, that these things like Trader Joe's as kind of an entity that is the child of the cross of sleep or the cross of planning, has made it their job to figure out what we collectively like,
Hmm.
right? And then experimented with this, like, okay, here are the different things. We make it. This is ready to consume for you.
Hmm.
You don't have to worry too much about it anymore. You know,
We got you.
we got you.
Yeah. Um, so tell me, let's weaving it back. You were speaking about the modalities. Where where are we in those?
Yeah. I think when I'm thinking about the modalities, I'm thinking about how every project, every business, every relationship, every chapter of our own personal journey has a start, has a peak, has an ending,
Hmm.
right? Loosely speaking. And part of living emergence, I think, is really honoring where we are in that journey. Are you in a moment of building? Are you in a moment of pushing the boulder up a hill, which is the domain of the cardinal signs? Are you, pushing it to the finish line, right? Are you really getting to the peak and like perfecting the form, which is the realm of the fixed signs? Or are you in a moment of having done the thing, you are starting to notice that you're starting to be on autopilot about this and the energy is starting to diffuse and you're being asked to surrender the form into something new, right? And I think even just loosely using that as a mental concept can be so helpful because I think what is needed in each of these chapters are very different, Britton.
Yeah.
Mhm. I've been thinking about the difference between intuition and attunement, because to me, they are not the same.
Hmm. Hmm.
Intuition is somewhat similar to instinct. Like intuition is just whatever is coming through in the moment, right? Whatever intelligence is like speaking to us in the moment. But attunement to me is this process of really being in our discernment and being in communication with the person that we are collaborating with our creative project, with our business, and asking, okay, I got the intuitive hit to do this. Is this what's resonant for you in this moment? Or is this for later, right? Going back to your definition of emergence being about proper timing and proper circumstances. I think attunement is the skill that we are developing so that we can honor our intuition and learn from the intuitive knowing, right? And can kind of properly recalibrate as necessary. And um, earlier, when I was thinking about emergence, one, I was thinking about the definition of emergence. Two, I was thinking about why emergence as a concept is coming up in the collective. And three, I was thinking about what are the skills and frameworks that are needed for us to honor the ever emergent nature of reality, and also um, what are the skills and frameworks we can begin to have relationships with so that we can impact the collective emergence, right? Because
Right.
going back to this idea of like the individual frequency coming through more clearly, I think there's something really important here about recognizing that I have a piece that is unique to me that I can contribute to the collective unfolding. Mhm.
I love this. And it's what's bringing up for me too is it feels really important to reframe and come into a loving relationship to the concept skill. There
Hmm.
can be shame with the term.
Yes.
There's also a lot of pleasure.
Yeah.
Um, and that if we can be generous with each other, if we can be generous with ourselves, that we are learning a skill
Yeah.
and give ourselves the chance to be learning,
Mm.
then we can develop it. And it's really about, to me, learning to respond with a relationship to these skills. That
Yeah.
is how, what can help navigate through these cycles.
Yes. Yes. I'm curious to hear if you want to share, Britton. Is there maybe a specific example that comes to mind from your own life or, from the experience of running the business that speaks to, hmm, that really speaks to unshaming this idea of building skills and where that has been helpful, or like maybe where you realize like, oh, I didn't realize that maybe I was kind of shaming myself, or I see a lot of people shaming themselves in the process of learning a particular skill.
Yeah. You know, I feel like sign wise, we could probably run this game through every sign,
Mhm.
but it certainly comes up with Virgo. Um,
Yes. I was thinking about this because the other day you were talking about this in one of your Instagram stories
was
about how
I?
this was a while back, but you were saying during Virgo season that your posts, or I think your content around Unshaming Virgo,
Oh,
received
yes.
the most kind of criticism or like kind of Virgo hate.
Yeah, like there's the most sense of like, should not be allowed. We do need to shame Virgo. How dare you? And I think like one of my favorite phrasings that has come forward with in my love of Virgo over the years is something like, what would it be like to give yourself the generosity to be a human who is learning to be here?
Mm,
Um,
mm,
so that you can then, with that generosity, give yourself the space to be a person who is learning things. And then turning, as you turn towards it, you are sharpening the knife. You are you're getting more exacting. You're getting more skilled at and specific at
yeah.
that ability. And it is very scary to feel non-exacting, like to feel like you're just fumbling around, like clumsy, don't know what you're doing. It's not a great feeling. A lot of that comes from perfectionism, conditioning, the fear of being witnessed and not being skilled. But what happens when we don't let that in is that we put this big wall up and it harms our relationships because we project onto people with skill. It's
Yeah.
hurtful to ourselves because we then presume that we're incapable of these skills,
Hmm.
which is unfair to ourselves. We deny ourselves the pleasure of seeing gradual change over time, where we get to look back and be like, wow, from showing up
Yeah.
to that, I'm I can really see that I've been learning things.
Yeah.
So I do think that I'm kind of losing the original question, but
I think you're answering it perfectly.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what I was thinking about, you're speaking about ideas in the shower, my own ideas in the shower too. Was thinking about like cardinal as experientially in a season.
Hmm.
It can feel like, the winds of change, like we're
Yeah.
being hit with, whether you like it or not, this change is coming through. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And um in a person, it can also feel like that, just like
Yes.
this person is entering the room and this is changing the room.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
like emergently changes here.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
like kind of a force, that's the force of turning things in a direction.
Yeah.
And and I feel like sometimes in life we initiate that ourselves, and sometimes life initiates it for us.
Yes.
No, and
Yes.
and we decide there's nothing we can do but
Yeah.
follow the force of change as it's revealing itself.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about fixity and how fixed signs have a reputation of being unchanging, but that's not true.
Hmm.
And like what a powerful thing it is when we changed in a fixed place in ourselves. Like
Yeah.
I do feel like we can deeply resist it,
Yeah.
like the force
Yeah.
comes in, the force comes in, and we are like, whoa, no,
Hmm.
um, and that's important. And sometimes it is the intelligence and it is the medicine. And in like the deepest places that we've changed, and we are never going to be the same in how we
Yeah.
interface with reality at like the most core places. And then we know it inside. It's like, whoa. I was thinking like with the mutability, that there's a, whereas in cardinal and fixed, it almost feels like it's hard to be outside the experience of change. It's just what's here.
Yeah.
Like you're just in an experience. You can't really talk about it. Really, in the same way as the lunar cycle, when we get to the mutable, there's this sense of being able to look at it and be able to be like, this is what I was learning. The insights are appearing. Like,
Yeah.
I can talk about this now. I can educate now. I can share. I can distribute. It seems like it has this ability. The mutability is also very much like mutative and adaptive, but
Yeah.
it's like responding to things that have kind of already happened
Yes.
almost. Do
Yes.
you agree with that?
I do. As you were speaking, Britton, I was thinking about okay, so just to kind of bring it back to like the whole everything that you were just saying. With regards to cardinal, I think that cardinal signs or cardinal energy brings in a certain urgency, but not like a man-made, like mental fabricated urgency, but rather like the sense of like, oh, we gotta get changed. We
Mm-hmm.
got to shift. Like, I'm thinking about the seasons as you were speaking, and about how every time spring is about to come, I'm like, wow, I'm so hot in the sweater. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I have to get rid of this, right? Or when we're entering into like peak summer, it's like, wow, we gotta be shirtless here because this is crazy. Like I can't even stand this anymore. So I feel like cardinal sign kind of brings that sense of like, okay, we gotta change something around here, right? Like this is no longer working. We are being shepherded into like a new era. Um, I also was getting the imagery of like again pushing the boulder up a hill, I think with the cardinal signs, right? There is kind of more of that energy of like, okay, how do we how do we rally the energy, right? How do we rouse the energy to bring it like into motion? Like there's kind of this momentum quality to it.
Mhm.
As someone who have uh two exalted planets in cardinal signs and one domicile planet in cardinal sign, I have had to be very mindful of this, Britton, because I feel like, I sometimes, at least in the past few years, I've liked to, I think it was also part of my own journey around showing up, right? I've liked to show up in a gentle, maybe more mutable part of myself. Also, I'm a Virgo rising, so it makes all the sense in the world, right? Like I kind of come in maybe with this more gentle energy and this kind of giving people a lot of options, like you can do this or you can do this, and there's kind of that relief energy that can come with the mutable energy. But because in my chart there's a lot of cardinal energy, there is kind of a pushiness, I think, to my energy. Even if my conscious mind isn't pushing people, but I've had to learn to really incorporate this into my conscious part of self because when I lead with too much of that gentleness, I find that it doesn't always serve the people who come to my space because they're like, oh, we're gonna come to Jonathan's space and we're just gonna be like, experiencing this really sweet, compassionate, energy, right? But I found that actually bringing a little bit more of that force from the beginning is helpful because that is part of what I'm contributing. Like I am not here to tell people like everything's gonna be okay all the time. It's like, no, there are times where you have to work, right? Like
Mhm.
you gotta get organized here. You gotta say no to certain things. You gotta put some things away. You gotta start embracing certain things. And it's like, I think the cardinal energy, when we're in cardinal moments of our lives, there is a little bit of action that's necessary. Like you can't just continue to take a nap,
Yeah.
you know? If you want to make something happen, you gotta a time block. This is something you and I have spoken about, Britain. It's like we gotta put on the timer, and like do the thing and get into a more focused mode, right? And then with regards to the fixed energy, the phrase that's coming to me as you were speaking was the idea of the through line. I think
Mm.
fixed signs really want to understand the essence of something,
Mhm.
and get super clear about what that essence is and get very connected with it. Because once you are at the peak, I think it's kind of easier maybe to really get the lay of the land, right? If we think about again the fixed sign as being like the top of the mountain or the bottom of the ocean, right? It has
Yeah.
that energy of being like, yep, I got it. You know, this is how we this is how we do it. This is what it feels like. And kind of connecting to that, you
This is
know?
how we do it. This is what it feels like. Ugh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I think with regards to the mutable, there's kind of a fluency when we're in mutable periods. Um, to your point, I agree with you, at least in my own lived experience, when I'm in a more mutable space, because I've gone through this whole journey of climbing up the mountain, being at the top of the mountain, and all that entails. I think in the mutable period, we can get very nuanced, and there's kind of a fluency in how we talk about it, and there's a lot of flexibility. And also, if we think about it as like coming down the mountain, right, there's more momentum. Like you don't have to force it anymore. There's actually flow in whenever we're in the more mutable period. And something I'm thinking about too is how going back to the idea of skill. To me, skillfulness is basically just about making more mistakes and recovering and identifying those mistakes and recovering from those mistakes more quickly. You know,
Yes.
that's all it is. It's like I see this with playing the piano, which I've been kind of really returning to recently,
Oh.
where whenever I'm learning a new piece, Britain, it's so painful. It really is. I sound so bad, right? And it's like if I can bring a lot of discipline but also playfulness around it, knowing that I'm in my cardinal period, right? I am just learning this new piece. I'm still reading what the notes are, trying to figure it out in my hands, and letting myself make a lot of mistakes, starts and stops. Um, then I can get into a rhythm, right? Once I get into the rhythm, I'm more in that fixed period where I'm like, oh, yeah, these are the passages that are really easy for me. We don't need to continue beating that particular passage. Like we know how to play that. But this, these 4 bars or whatever is a little bit more challenging. Like let's hone in, right? Let's
Yeah.
really get into it. We know this is where the work is, and then we continue to practice until there's more fluency. And then, and this is the part where I realized in my conservatory training, I did not get this memo, Britton, which is once you get to the other side, you're actually still going to make a lot of mistakes. But
Yes.
fluency is just like making those mistakes in a way that's maybe more imperceptible. Like
Hmm.
some of the most dazzling performers I've seen um, have not been performers who play things perfectly. It's not about playing it perfectly. It's about still maintaining the essence while you're making a bunch of mistakes.
Yes.
And this is the same with any art form, right? Including teaching, including running a business, including relationships, right? Like I noticed that in times where I have gained fluency, for example, in my relational practice with my partner, it's not that I don't say stuff that offends him. I still do. That's also part of being a 3-5. But I am more attuned to when I'm doing it, and I can quickly see it happening, and I can quickly shift myself out of this, like, oh, but that is my opinion. He
Right.
needs to validate me, right? I quickly get out of that, and I can recognize that he's hurt in this moment by something that I said, and I just apologize. And we move on. you know? And I think fluency happens through observing these cycles and being, I think we have to be humorous and playful and forgiving and kind to ourselves throughout the whole process. And
Hmm.
part of, really noticing where we're at and asking where we're at and not applying strategies that are wrong for the specific stage we're in is all contributing to us being kinder to ourselves in the process of our living emergence, you know?
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that like this conversation, it had emergently an invitation, like it had an initiation, a cardinal. Okay, well, we're going to do this. We're going to set it up. We're going to get it on the calendar. Would you like to come? Yes. Now change is here. And from a more mystical perspective, it does feel that when we initiate things like timeline, it's like everything starts to converge
Yeah.
differently into your path because you put something into motion, and now you don't even have to be thinking about it all the time. It's kind of working in your subconscious, and you're picking things up in your environment because you're going to have this conversation. And but there can't be a kind of structural background, like, let's get to the heart of what we want to talk about. Do we know kind of the basic things we want to hit? Yes.
Mm.
And then we can come here and just see where we go.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. I think this is what's coming up for me in this moment. Can I read a passage, Britton, from
Oh,
this book
yeah.
that I love this book. It's by Benabel Wen. It's called The Tao of Craft. And earlier on in the book, I feel like I've been
I
reading this
feel like it.
passage for years now. Yeah. I'm repeating myself, but I think it bears repeating because I think where I want to go with this is acknowledging that this is kind of something that a lot of mystics throughout the ages have talked about, Britain. This is I think what you're speaking to is like that marriage, that union of the yin and the yang that are they can't be separated from one another. Um, okay, so let me start reading from this passage. Chi is life force, the breath that brings vitality. Chi is the unseen impetus behind all change, creative or destructive, whether it is initiation, continuation, transformation, or cessation. Notice the modalities there. There's the
Mhm.
cardinal, fixed, and the mutable. A theoretical principle presumed by the craft that will be presented in this book is the relationship between two characterizations of chi that I'll refer to as personal chi and cosmic chi. Personal chi is the individual circuit of vital energy flowing through each one of us. Cosmic chi is the principle that each one of our individual circuits is connected to every other, and a unifying connection of circuits emerges to form a collective energy force. The transactions and occurrences of cosmic chi have a direct and relational impact on each individual circuit of personal chi. That concept can be likened to the Western occult maxim, as above, so below, where events that happen at the macrocosm will also happen at the microcosm. Thus, a practitioner who understands his or her own personal chi, who understands the self, can gain the wisdom of fully understanding the cosmic chi, or understanding the universe. To know yourself is to know the universe. Study of the universe and the physical and metaphysical realities of the universe is thus a study of yourself. When the way of the macrocosm is veiled to you, look to the way of the microcosm, and then the mystery will be unveiled. That is the foundation from which you will build your knowledge of craft. So, what
Hmm.
she's really speaking to here, right, is this idea that, like, there's this constant loop that is happening. And I'm trying to think now in my Piscean Gate 63 way, why this passage was really uh, kind of nudging me while you were speaking. And I think the reason why is because there is this more kind of young way of being, which is much more like we got to plan things, we got to put things into order, right? We got to structure things. And then there's this more yin of way of being of like, let's just see what happens. It's just creativity wanting to like show itself. And um, I think they are both always in collaboration with one another. And I think part of living emergence is knowing how much of each of these components or these energies is being asked of this moment.
Yeah.
Because I've run into a lot of issues in my journey where I put too much structure too soon before there's energy for it, and then nothing happens. And then I say, okay, that structure doesn't work. Is it true? Did the structure not work, or is it because I was using the structure at the wrong part of the cycle in a way? Or
Mm.
maybe not wrong, but like not when it's actually needed, right? This is something I see a lot with creatives and entrepreneurs when they're in a moment of burnout, actually. When you're in a moment of burnout, what you need is resting, and what you need is a deep evaluation of what your values are. Not to completely rebrand. This happens all the time. I've done this too. It's like we're like, everything I've said before is no longer valid. Tossing everything away, right? Like that's not what we need. We're also not in a moment of bringing something new. Because I think a lot of people then is like, oh, I gotta get really clear about like what my 5-year plan is, and that's kind of coming from the need for certainty when actually maybe what's needed here is like releasing, letting go, surrendering, resting, right? Um, Turning away for a moment. Sometimes I think there is that moment when we've just learned something and we need to integrate it and let it ferment in our system, and we just can't do anything about it. We're not ready to share it. Maybe we're not ready to teach it, and I think honoring where we're at in that cycle is a skill that necessitates us to make mistakes in order to learn the skill.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this is so true. I feel like I talk a lot about listening and receptivity,
Yeah.
not because it's like more important, but just because it's what we have least skill in, from conditioning. Um,
Yes.
it's like, well, I got the skill of planning and, making things happen. Um, I got that one. But it's still there. It's still a part of it. But yeah, like I've been trying to live where action begins with listening. Um, so that then if nothing's coming through, then there's no action actually, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Um, I do act on a lot of things, I think, because I know that they're available to be ephemeral works of art that won't come back. Um, if I thought it was if I'm building something that I want to last a long time, it's going to be a different listening process, the
Yep.
different action process.
Ooh. Can you speak more to that, Britton? I feel like you have some codes about that.
Codes. Well, often I feel something coming through and it's so vigorous and it's so alive. I like I don't have it all figured out. Um the frequency is like pre-structure, and it wants to be shared. It wants to come through, and it's going to be like a brilliant first draft,
Yeah.
And I need to allow it to be a first draft, in which case it may, in the drafting process, after the first draft has been performed, um, I may realize that it's altering
Yeah.
its form and its nature, and it may want to even be called a new name and have a complete transformation. So, but if I had halted at the surge where something was coming through and said, I can't do this until I know everything about it and I have it all figured out, I don't know what would have happened with all that energy.
Mm.
But having done that a lot, I now feel like I have a better sense for the momentum of like a bigger world to build versus an experience to host or something.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
and if we're talking about world building and like a deeper, bigger place, there are just many more factors to kind of infuse into a map of that and to the architecture of that want time and want drafts of their own, even though of course the world will change and changes with the humans who come into it, and then they mutate it. Like if
Yeah.
I'm making emergence astrology program, like I can only know so much until the humans come in and bring
Mm.
their frequency to it. Am
Yeah.
I available to create something strong but flexible, and think about it like that, where a shorter experience can fully be like so exciting splatter, you know? And like we all just had an experience and that was amazing. Okay, next time I do it, you know, I learned some things. I like
Yeah.
get the 3-5 thing, getting up already immediately. I know a dozen things to alter the next time I do it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Does
love
that
this.
support what you
Yeah,
asked me to elaborate?
I think so. What I'm hearing from you is that um a few things I'm hearing. One is really honoring. You didn't say it exactly like this, Britton, but what I'm hearing is really honoring what wants to move through in the moment that may not that may be completely ephemeral, because maybe that's also part of like clearing the channel, right? Like when
Oh,
you
mhm.
honor, like, oh yeah, this thing just wants to be this ephemeral fun thing. We all get together and then we disperse, right? We don't kind of like hold on to it, and we give it like the space that it needs, but also simultaneously maintaining and cultivating that level of persistence of like, okay, I'm going to put this out. I don't have all the information, and I'm gonna let it show me what it wants to become over time. And
Yeah.
and then in those situations, it feels to me like the skill that's needed is the skill to recognize that there's a longer game that's happening here, and to take it all in as like data collection, right? And experiences that allow us to refine it with each iteration, without even making. What I'm also perceiving from you is like there's not a lot of like, um, I think there's something here about unshaming emergence too, right? Like really letting that process unfold with neutrality in some ways, I think. Like letting it be like, yeah, the process has its own intelligence. I like this, I did not like this, and we can kind of calibrate based on that, you know?
Yes. I do feel called to share a couple more things here that feel important. One
Mm,
is not withholding in the process, like very when there's a surge that's emerging, um, just like really sharing
mm,
and not worrying about um, where to withhold and for like the pay on the other side of a pay portal or something, like kind of navigating generosity and withholding um, for for my creative process, especially
mm,
if it's a first draft of a thing, it needs to move through generously.
mm,
And then with that is watching scarcity with labor, because worrying about having to create like a build up to a thing that I can then reuse later, or like build like assets to reuse later,
mm.
really slows me down, because that all is probably could very well be ephemeral, and it doesn't mean it wasn't worth it. And there will be more at the next thing. So this does not have to be reusable, actually. Um, and just like watching that process, I think, is a huge part of for me engaging with creativity emergently.
Yeah, yeah. You know, okay, this is what's coming up for me. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this, Britton, but this is what's coming up for me as you were speaking, which is I think on a consciousness level, those of us who are interested in this path of like entrepreneurship or solopreneurship, or even just like being a creative person making things out there that also have to make a living, um, a few years ago has been around like the idea of resting and the idea of not burning ourselves out. And I think that's a really important exploration. And what I'm starting to see as my energy comes back, replenished from the kind of burnout that can happen from this very cross of planning idea of like work yourself to death, like hustle to death culture, is that actually energy is not this linear thing, you know? That actually my energy what is the phrasing here? It's like energy builds up as it's allowed to move.
Mm.
That energy is actually regenerative and it works on a flow principle. Like it's not like this, right? Like right now, okay, I know people can't see me, but I have this notepad, right? Energy is not like, okay, I used up all my notepad and now I ran out of paper. That's not how energy works. It's more like you have to trust where it's going, try a little bit without like burning your candle on both ends. And with each piece or like with each move of like trusting the resonance, going in that direction, energy actually builds. Like there's kind of a momentum that builds and it will naturally get to the other side where it naturally dissipates. And I think that a lot of the productivity mindset that is more kind of this um let's just say like young or like more masculine, like we gotta track all the things that we do in the day, is predicated on the idea that like time is limited, energy is scarce, be careful to protect your energy, which I think has its time and place.
Hmm.
But once you know what your boundaries are, I think energy likes you to play with it. You know, energy likes you to be playful. And I think what I found is in moments of not having energy for me, there's usually some sort of wound that I need to be tending to. And it's actually more important to tend to that wound rather than feel like you can't let the energy move. You know, because
Yeah.
sometimes like there's this idea that like as you said, like, oh, I have to create the perfect thing so that I don't waste my energy later. But actually sometimes what can hurt our energy more is trying to get to the final draft when you're still in like, draft number five, right?
Yeah.
When maybe this novel or like this album that you're creating may need like 500 drafts. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the intelligence of the thing, right? So if you just honor that you are currently still in the early iteration of it, that actually honors your energy and it that there is kind of this natural replenishment that happens with your energy, you know? And I think we actually the places where we leak energy that I know for sure is codependency leaks energy, like nothing else.
Yeah, well, that's a big one. And
That's a big one.
I do think resisting the wounds, resisting looking at where you are hurting, um,
Yeah, you're right.
like resisting holding, parts of you that are afraid. Like, whoa, that resistance is a huge energy waste. Like, and as someone who's like wants skill in like energy efficiency, like I'm going to stop what I'm doing and tend to those parts.
Yes.
Because it's going to be what are we even going to get done the rest of this day?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know it always feels so scary. That's the resistance,
Hmm.
but then you feel so good when you move
Yes.
through.
Yes. Yes. It's like, I know you've been talking about self-validation a lot as well, Britton, and I think this is where practicing that can be helpful because a lot of the times the kind of validation we need is either not available outside or is asking for us to validate it internally first so that we can clearly see who in the outside world is able to validate that for us. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been thinking a lot about this, and this is a slightly spicy perspective, which is, a lot of us, I think, get caught up in the idea of trying to have people who don't have the capacity to validate us in a specific way. We get caught up in this power struggle of needing them to validate us. consciously or unconsciously. But it's like that's actually us essentially wasting our energy because that person, it's like I heard this example the other day and it like I was crying and like laughing on the floor, which is like imagine being someone who walks into a McDonald's and say, I want three Whoppers. And then the person is like, sir, we don't sell Whoppers here. And then being like, I think this was Jessa Reed who said something like this, and then being like even more insistent, like, sir, I want a Whopper. And then like the person who works at the McDonald's be like, I think Burger King sells that. It's like right across the street. And then you say it again the third time, no, give it to me. You know, it's like, no, you're not gonna get it from that particular shop. Move on. Right? How much happier will we be if we are not consistently, like I see this a lot with, for example, parent parent student or parent child dynamic, right? Where we
Yeah.
ask one of our parents to validate us in a very specific way, but without realizing, Britain, that actually that picture that we hold that, oh, I am their child, they were supposed to validate me in a certain way, is a form of violence to both ourselves and the other person. And the moment we release that and we say to the universe, listen, I am releasing my need to be validated by this specific person, but my need to be validated in this way is still here. Can
Yeah.
you show me who can validate this for me? Bring in a new actor into this game. I need a new character. And then, I think in releasing that person from giving that to you, a new character magically walks in and it's like, hello, I am this new friend who gets to validate this part of you. And
Yeah.
they don't even have to like put in a lot of effort a lot of the times in validating that because it's natural to who they are. So this is, I think, like I want to loop this back into what we've been talking about with regards to resonance, because I think that's what it means to live according to resonance. Like really vibing out, like, is this person available for this or not?
Are they available?
Yeah, and putting a question mark and making a relational practice too of being like, hey, are you available for this? If not, thank you very much. I'm going to move on. I'm going to find another person who is available for this, right? And I think that is a radically different way than what we've been taught, which is, I am your mother, you are my child. You are supposed to give me this, I'm supposed to give you this, right? Which is such a, like, it's such a carceral way of relating to one another if we think about it, because we imprison one another.
Yeah.
We are like, you are supposed to give me this. You are my partner. You are not being a good partner. you know?
I wanted you to fulfill this for me.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think all of us continue to move through that experience, Britain, of like, oh, now we are in a relationship with this partner and we realize, oh, we actually want this. Can we validate that we actually want this without forcing other people to try to give that to us?
Yeah.
And there's so many other alternatives where you can communicate to the other person, like, hey, actually, this really matters to me because haven't you had this experience, Britton, of like you validating truly what you want and what you need, communicating that clearly, and then the person is like, actually, now that you say that, I want to give that to you. I
Yeah.
want to make this with you, you know?
Completely. It
Yeah.
is said this is a skill.
This is a
This
skill.
too is a skill.
Yes.
The like tagline to the episode. Um, well, I feel like if you grew up with family dynamics, speaking of codependency as energy loss, if you grew up with family dynamics where um, availability is not honestly named, and so like people run out of availability all of a sudden, and you didn't mean for that to happen, or you're not allowed to name unavailability.
Yeah.
Um, Learning to develop this is it's a skill. It's not like a personality thing that we can't ever change, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not who we are.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Hmm. Where do you feel? How do you feel? Where are we? Um,
I feel great. I feel like that is a really comprehensive mm, discussion on emergence. Yeah. Yeah. And it's
yay.
like, I think maybe what's emerging for me in this moment. What's emerging for me in this moment is I feel like okay, this is where I want to kind of land a plane, Britain.
Amazing.
I feel like we're in a moment now of especially if we're looking at this period from 2020, right? We're really taking everything we've learned from the experience of being forced to look within and taking it outside
Mm.
and kind of in a playful way really applying what we've learned about our own selves, consciousness, um, maybe through the lens of mystical modalities. I feel like, if people are listening to this, they are, because, they're listening to you and I. But also through other means too. Like I think we all kind of have our own version of that awakening, let's just say, right? From like the collective dream of like we're all doing the same thing. If you think back to like 2019, like we're all kind of hustling and doing the same thing, compared to now, right? Like everybody was like traveling like crazy, and not really like checking in with themselves, and like more, 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 more. And I think we are in a moment of shifting away from that, but also I think specifically if you are being called to listen to this conversation, especially if you get this far with us, I think you're really being called to bring forth what it is that you've been learning about yourself and what it is that you've been learning about relating to yourself more authentically into other areas of your life. And I think this is a creative practice, right? Because as you're doing that, you're going to shift and transform and create new agreements with reality. And, reality is going to show you who and what in your life are ready for that.
Yes.
And some people are going to be like, whoa, I don't want that. And some other people are going to be like, whoa, whatever it is that you've been moving through, that is so attractive to me. I want to be a part of that. And I think we are in a moment now of like really teaching one another what it means to relate from a space of as ourselves in this moment. You know, like what does it mean to have relationships? What does it mean to create projects? What does it mean to create um, connections and spaces where each of us get to be ourselves and we get to honor that through that we are creating something new. And like you said, Britton, I think this will mean that we'll hang out with people in mid conversation. They're like, okay, I'm done with this conversation. Thank you very much. Can we have the check?
Yeah.
And not taking that personally. Be like, okay, you know, that's what the moment is calling for. We are done. Great.
Yeah. So profound, everything that you just shared there. Thank you for landing the plane where you did.
Yeah.
Please share. Please share what you got coming up. This will be
Mhm.
coming out really soon. Is there anything you wanted to promote or let people know about?
Yeah. Let's see. Currently, um, I have this giant gap in my offerings. On the one hand, there's my newsletter, there's my podcast, totally free. I show up pretty regularly. You can listen to that, sign up for that. Or on the other side, I work one on one with people, and I work with people in two ways. So I either have a session with people, and then people have a week. to kind of talk with me, you know, through voice memo, email. We can kind of hash out some questions. So it's kind of, I see it as like kind of a mini mentorship, mini coaching type of situation, or we can work on a 3 month basis. That one is much more involved. It's much more this like deep dive coaching mentorship. I work with people on developing energetic attunement skills. I work with people on their creative projects. I work with people on their relationships. Um, it's a very, I think what I love about working one on one is like the level of flexibility that's available there. And also we get to really work relationally. So, um, it's a very alchemizing way of working. So, you know, it's really a dance, right? I give people perspective. Sometimes that really resonates, sometimes that really doesn't resonate, but really the point is to get people to get closer into the heart of like what matters to them and how they want to walk their path in a way that's true to their energy. Because I think this is really where the frontier is. You know, like we are no longer in a moment where we are trying to manipulate our energy to work a certain way anymore. And like,
Yes.
you know, subscribing to this myth that reality is this monolith and we have to fit reality, right? But rather, I think a lot of people who want to work with me are really deep in the process of creating something that feels really true for them. Yeah.
Like in ways that we've discussed here today.
Yes. Yes. Hmm. And it's
Thank
really
you.
unique to each person. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you,
you
Britton.
so much for coming on today. This was so rich and fun.
Yay. Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation, Britton. I love you. I love your work. And yeah, just really grateful
Thank
for
you.
the ways that we've been dancing with each other all these years.
I love you too. Well, 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 how about that? Pretty, pretty fun. I can't wait to re listen myself. I'm just gonna get right back to the astral plane where we landed. And I'm so excited to have y'all there with us for this one. If you love Moon to Moon, please, please, please take a moment to give it a rating or a review. If you are loving Jonathan's voice and just feeling so nourished by their wisdom, please check out the show notes where there's links to connect with them through Instagram, through their podcast, Healing the Spirit, explore their website so that you can see their offerings, including their one on one mystical mentorship. And as for wrapping up, what I would like to say is because it's coming out on Monday, will be after the second eclipse. I will say to you, welcome to a new cycle. Welcome to this new beginning. May it be nourishing for you, expansive for you, a discovery for you. May we be gentle with one another as we adapt to this human experience alongside each other. Sending out a big hug everywhere. I will see you at the next one. Cheers.